Australia's two hardest hit COVID states are accelerating towards normality, with vaccination milestones set to be reached early, triggering easing of restrictions. Victoria is on track to hit its double vaccination target ahead of schedule next week, and residents could know within days whether lockdown will end earlier. The state is making a final push to get those numbers over the line, rolling out pop-up clinics at cafes, gyms and shopping strips.
Meanwhile, New South Wales is also speeding up its roadmap. The state government's COVID Recovery Committee is meeting today to discuss lifting more COVID rules next week. Let's go straight to Makhnaaz Nguri in Sydney and Leanne Wong in Melbourne. Good morning, both. Leanne, kicking off with you. The Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews is pretty optimistic, isn't he, that restrictions could be eased earlier than anticipated?
That's right, Michael, and that's because we've really seen vaccination rates surge across Victoria, like here at the Royal Exhibition Building. As we know, Victoria was originally forecast to reach its 70% fully vaccinated target on October the 26th. That's when we'll see Melbourne's lockdown end, as well as some restrictions be lifted. But because of this increase in vaccinations, well, we're set to meet that target several days ahead of schedule. And officials have now said that they may make an announcement about when the state can reopen, as well as the next stages of the roadmap, what they'll look like, as early as Friday or this weekend. Now, Victoria's Chief Health Officer Brett Sutton has also said quite excitingly that officials haven't ruled out allowing home visits to resume once we hit that 70% target. That's despite the fact that as of the current roadmap, we're not set to have home visits. We're not allowed to have anyone in our homes until we reach 80%. However, he also said that Melbourne's lockdown ending, as well as the state's reopening, is still dependent on how many intensive care and hospital admissions the state's healthcare system can handle, as well as the number of infections. However, across the state, we are also seeing a push from the government to continue increasing these vaccination rates. We're seeing these pop-ups be installed in places like cafes, gyms, as well as local community centres, and that's really to bring more vaccines to other neighbourhoods across Melbourne. So how these pop-ups will work is that they'll be open for about 2 to 3 hour windows. They'll be administering the Pfizer vaccine only, and it'll be in conjunction with local GPs and pharmacies. But the best part is you won't need a booking. So you'll be able to walk up, get your vaccine, hopefully then leave with a coffee, which is very in true Melbourne style. But really, as officials continue to increase and look to increase vaccination rates, well, the Premier, however, has said that any reopening that the state does undertake will still be gradual. Let's take a listen to what he had to say yesterday.
I'm aiming toward the end of this week to be able to give you clarity about what I think next week looks like. But I can't quite do that yet. It isn't a flick the switch and you go from 100% shut to 100% open. It's a gradual thing. What a fantastic problem for us to have to work through.
Premier Daniel Andrews. Leanne, thank you. Makhnaaz in Sydney. Businesses have been given a boost ahead of new freedoms being announced earlier than anticipated as well.
That's right, Michael. Good morning. So as we near stage 2 of New South Wales roadmap out of lockdown, the state government has announced some new economic initiatives. So Dine and Discover vouchers are back. Adults in New South Wales will have access to $50 more, $25 for eating out and $25 for recreational activity that they can use until June next year. And that's costing the government $250 million. They're also investing $66 million to encourage al fresco style dining. So businesses that get in quick can have access to $5,000 grants that will help them set up outdoor style open air dining. Here's what the Premier had to say about that new initiative.
We want our businesses to be free and to flourish. We want people right across the state to enjoy the best that New South Wales has to offer. We've got some of the best food, the best activities, not just in Australia but in the world, and we think these changes today will help our businesses flourish over the summer months.
So the Premier is also set to discuss bringing forward stage 2 with the New South Wales COVID and Economic Recovery Committee today. He did say that he's sticking to the plan to open up or enter stage 2 on the Monday after we reach that 80% milestone, and it does look like that will be happening this weekend. Currently, we have about 90.8% of the eligible population having had their first dose, and 75.2% are fully vaccinated. That new stage will include easing of restrictions like being allowed 20 visitors in the home, 50 people in outdoor gatherings, and masks in offices will become optional. And caps will also increase in places like gyms, hospitality venues, retail and beauty salons, and drinking while standing will also be permitted. Another thing that is set to be discussed is whether regional travel will also be brought forward and whether that's safe to do, considering the fact that vaccination rates in the regions are still much lower than that of Greater Sydney. But we are expecting to hear more about that later on today.
OK, all ears. Mark Nars and Leanne, thank you both. Meanwhile, Canberra is spending its last day in lockdown with major restrictions easing there at midnight. The Territory is expected to reach the 99% vaccine milestone by the end of November. And the ACT government has just introduced vaccine mandates for staff at all early childhood centres and primary schools.
Pfizer is one step closer to getting its vaccine approved for Australian children aged between 5 and 11. The Therapeutic Goods Administration has now given Pfizer permission to apply for that age group. Last week, the company sought approval in the United States for its vaccine to be given to 5 to 11-year-olds.
A Queensland woman is facing charges for allegedly pretending to be a doctor and issuing 600 fake COVID-19 medical exemption certificates. The 45-year-old will appear in court later this month. The certificates state a person is exempt from undergoing COVID testing, receiving a vaccine and even wearing a mask.
2 Victorian men who snuck into Western Australia to attend the grand final will spend Christmas in jail. Hayden Burbank and Mark Babbage falsified documents to suggest they'd been living in the Northern Territory and not Victoria. They've been jailed for 10 months but will only serve 3 for potentially exposing 61,000 people at the grand final to COVID.
Tasmania is on alert today after a positive man breached hotel quarantine and spent hours in Hobart's outer northern suburbs. The 31-year-old from New South Wales had been refused a permit to enter Tasmania twice, but flew in from Melbourne anyway before escaping quarantine and being arrested.